Absolute pleasure to welcome Nosipho Maketo-van Den Bragt from Johannesburg, South Africa today. She's the founder and managing director of Chocolate Tribe, an award-winning visual effects studio and animation studio based in Johannesburg, South Africa. Nosipho is also my mentor, and so it's especially special to welcome you today. She's worn many hats from corporate law to being a creator, and she's here to share with us her journey, her body of brilliant work done by their studio, and also what goes into fostering an equal, open, vibrant, and creative working space for people. So everybody, please give a big round of applause for Nosipho.
Hello everybody. Thank you so much. Often when people introduce me, I have to pinch myself because I'm like, are they talking about me? Is it me that they're talking about? So I'd like to just maybe start by giving a round of applause to all the organizers of this event. I know it's not at the end, it's at the beginning, but I did a festival about 4 months ago, the first time ever. And I remember feeling like I was aging, like literally aging. So I'd like us to start with a huge round of applause, please, to Ritu, Pratik, Archana, and Snigdhu. Thank you again for welcoming me here in India, in Mumbai. Very first time ever. I came into contact with India many, many moons ago. Sorry, is it a bit lower? A bit lower, sorry. Up? How's this? Down? Up? Down. How's this? Good? A little bit down? Excellent. All right, okay, we're getting there. I remember coming into contact with India when I was a young student, and we did a book called A Passage to India. And I remember being fascinated. Those who are a certain age, I don't want to reveal my age, but those of you who are a certain age will remember that book. And for me, I was just enthralled by the color, just the intellect, and I see it all around me. So such an amazing experience to be here. So why are we here today? What an unlikely mix of words. Law, animation, and stereotypes. What the hell? I mean, that's like, 2, 3 strange bedfellows. So anyway, as I've been introduced, my name is Nosipho, so I'm just going to chug along and just tell you a bit about myself. I was born in Soweto. Does anybody know Soweto, Johannesburg? Been to South Africa? A bit more, sorry. How's this? Okay, you best do it. How's this? Hiya, you okay? Okay. Anybody been to Johannesburg, South Africa? Nobody? Oh, all right, okay. So I was born in Soweto, Johannesburg. So Soweto actually stands for Southwestern Townships. During the time of apartheid, black people were put in locations or in townships, and Soweto was one of the biggest, and it still is. I think it's about 2 million people who live in Soweto, and it was created to separate the two parties or people of different colors. And so I grew up in that environment, very politically charged, very vibrant, and I don't know if any of you know who the 2 Nobel Peace Prize winners are from South Africa. Anybody? No? Okay. Can give you a clue. Was the president of ours for a couple of years. There you go, Nelson Mandela and Bishop Emeritus Tutu. And anybody hear of the song Jerusalem? Yes, thank you. I'm getting something. This is a very tough crowd. Yeah, but the reason why I even talk about that song is because as a community of creators, we've become more and more connected, and that song was one of the greatest connectors of the world, and it still continues being that. So anyway, I was born to parents who were both teachers, and both of them pivoted into different careers. Sorry, am I causing the feedback? Is because I can hear it coming through. Is it okay? Are you happy? Are we fine? Good. Okay, so Born to parents both teachers, and they both pivoted. My dad became a judge's registrar, a legal clerk, and my mom a nurse and a matron in a hospital. And what fascinated me about this, as I was thinking about this presentation, was that my dad was a consummate storyteller. He'd always be telling stories to a point where he would start laughing himself at the story, much to my mother's annoyance and irritation, because we wanted to get to the punchline, and he was in stitches. But what was important for me with that was, it told me that storytelling is such a potent or a powerful way of sharing, yourself with other people. It was very important for me to understand how, a single person or one person could stand in front of a crowd and tell stories and move people, make them cry, make them laugh. So storytelling became a very important aspect of my life. Growing up, I was an avid reader, had a huge fascination with words, so I would sit all day long going through a thesaurus or a dictionary, looking at different words and connecting with those words, because for me, I felt words were so powerful and it's important to choose your words wisely. So, and I loved watching legal dramas, so I'll share some of the things that I used to watch as as a kid, and I don't know if some of you recognize some of these. Does anyone know this one? Yeah, what is that? Yes. And then, okay, this one says it. And then this one, the one at the Archie, brilliant. So I remember actually having a big fight with a friend of mine who had torn up, actually her dog literally ate my Archie comic. And I never spoke to her for about 3 months because I was so irritated. And then, okay, we made peace. She eventually gave me another one. So that is how I was so connected to reading and just being immersed in, the creative aspect of reading. I recently started collecting John Grisham books, very great American writer. I know it's kind of like commercial writing, but love to collect his books and still going through those. And so for me, the connection between books became so potent when a lot of the shows that I used to read about became TV shows. So some of them like Alfred Hitchcock shows, Agatha Christie, Perry Mason was one of my favorites. So I naturally went to watch some of these. I don't know, does anyone know? This is kind of obvious, okay? So who knows what this is besides the bed hair days that they had back then? Miami Vice, correct, that's it. And the other one, this one is fairly Ally McBeal. So yeah, I mean, these were kind of like my staple food growing up. Loved to watch legal dramas, and these are some are more recent. Does anyone recognize the other one at the end? We even have a Duchess coming from there. Oh, yes, that's the one. Sorry, wrong finger. That's this one? Suits, brilliant. The Good Wife, Law and Order, and JAG. And so the reason why I share my story and where I'm from is because I think, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's an unlikely bedfellows, law and animation or law and creativity. But for me, it isn't. I quickly connected the dots in terms of, being an attorney and being a creative. For me, I felt, being a lawyer allowed me to speak for marginalized communities. Gave me an opportunity to be part of, the change that was happening, not only in South Africa, but in the different creative spaces. And for me, being an artist or a creative who's also a lawyer, I share the experience of artists and creatives being marginalized communities. A lot of you and I'm sure the panel that was sitting here, will tell you in a school, whenever the curriculum or the budget kind of slims down in a school, the first thing to go is the art department or the creative department. Even in the sort of like workspace, when things are tight, the first budget is marketing and all the things that they feel are peripheral or not important. And so for me, artists and creatives are always a bunch that's kind of dispensable. Whenever things go wrong, the artists are the first ones to be pushed out of a company, and that for me resonated with me as a lawyer. And I made that connection that being a lawyer is actually, somebody even said being a lawyer is being most lawyers are failed actors, actually. And so being in a creative space as a lawyer, I feel like I'm right in the middle of, what is happening within the creative space. But lawyers are also storytellers. A contract in itself, who comes from a legal background? Do you have any lawyers here or former lawyers? No? Okay, no? Okay. But, being a lawyer is being a storyteller. When we draft contracts, what we are doing is actually telling a story of two or more parties. One party wants to sell this thing to the other party, and you put that in a story, albeit it's in sections and it's in this highfalutin language, but it is a story of two or more parties wanting to, create a collaboration or a company. And so it is very important as an attorney to be articulate, to be concise, and get to the point. And those are some of the things that, as a storyteller, you need to have. And for a storyteller, you need to be able to, for a third party like a judge, he needs to be able to read that story, and that is what a contract essentially is. And the best contracts are those that are written as a storyline and are understood by all parties who come, into contact with that. So even pleadings or arguments, if some of you have ever, God forbid you're in a court case, that's not the best place to be unless you are on the other side, the winning side. But pleadings and arguments are versions of stories. So even when you come in front of a judge, what you're essentially doing is telling your version of the story, and it is him or her who then has to decide who's the most convincing out of the 2 or 3 stories that are being told. They often say the truth is somewhere in the middle. Everybody's lying, the truth is somewhere in the middle. So for me, the connection of being a lawyer, being a storyteller, is a very important one. And so that is what I want to kind of hone in on today. In 2014, my husband and I, kind of disillusioned by life and feeling we needed to do something that was more impactful, we started a company called Chocolate Tribe, which is, the animation and visual effects studio that we own. And it was very strategically important to be both an animation and a VFX studio, because we felt a lot of studios in South Africa are either animation or VFX. And our understanding of animation and VFX is they use the same pipelines, it's the same techniques. And so why not replicate that in one way as well as the other? We started as 2 founders, and at the moment we're about 35 artists, and we're spanning the globe. We've got quite a number of artists even here in India that we're working with. We recently got a project that we're working with an Indian right here in Mumbai. So for me, it's almost surreal to be here and to actually see the people that we're working with, and just an amazing experience. We currently have 2 studios, one in Johannesburg, and we recently opened one in Cape Town beginning of this year. And so what it tells us is that there's such an appetite for this space. And as I was listening to, the educators, what I can tell you guys who are students, this is a career like no other. There are jobs, you just need to be very focused, great at what you do, and be tenacious. Don't give up. If someone rejects you, that's not the end all be all. You have to just keep pounding the pavement. And I know the occupation or the preoccupation of students, but also your parents. Your parents are like, when are you getting out of the house and getting that job? So it's important to just keep pounding that pavement. Our global, our global client partners are Netflix, Disney, BBC, Glassworks, Frame Store. We recently did an amazing video. We don't often do videos, but we did an amazing one with a group called Disturbed. Anybody know Disturbed? Huge American, please check it out. The reason why I kind of single it out is because we entered into a technical space that we've never been, using Mid-Journey. Anybody know Mid-Journey? Brilliant. Can you tell us a bit about it? Just an example, Mid-Journey. Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. Brilliant. Yes, yes, yes. So the thing is with Mid-Journey is it's now straddling that space between who's the artist? You know, who is the artist? Is it the AI, or is it the artist who feeds the information into the AI? And so the video that we did with Disturbed was a collage of footage and images that were generated by Mid-Journey, and it's, I think, garnered about 1 million views at the moment. So when you've got a minute, please have a look at that video with Disturbed. The song is called Bad Men, and it's kind of like a social commentary on, you know, what's happening in you know, in our lives. But we've worked on a number of shows for Netflix. We had about 4 feature films with Netflix. Disney, about 2 or 3 of those, and you know, more work is coming through from you know, those different partners. But I wanted to also share, you know, our mission as a company. The first thing that people often ask me is Chocolate Tribe. Why Chocolate Tribe? That's bizarre. And in 2015, we went to America to kind of like, you know, punt our business, and we're like, this is who we are. And a lot of people were a bit, you know, they cringed and like, Chocolate Tribe sounds a little bit offish. And for us, what it is, who doesn't like chocolate? I mean, anybody not like chocolate here? We love chocolate. And the interesting thing about chocolate is it can come in all different shades, right? Milk chocolate, brown chocolate, you know, it's got all the different flavors. So for us, that was a very important expression of being a diverse group of people, being unique, coming from different places. And the word tribe was also particularly important because tribe speaks to family, you know, community, you know, being together. And a lot of us see ourselves as a tribe and as a community. And certainly today, I see my tribe, you know, I see my community. And I am here because, you know, I had, and I still do have a tribe member here, Archana, who I was mentoring through a program called Women in Animation. And we just started talking, and here I am now in India discovering my new tribe as well. So for us, Chocolate Tribe means that, you know, and our mission statement is really to create 3D epic worlds that inspire our daily realities. We want to suspend belief. You know, we want people, especially because of COVID, a lot of us have, you know, been drawn into ourselves, and it's been difficult. You heard some of the speakers previously who were talking about, I think, Bafana, you were talking about social anxiety of students, not only just the students, their parents, you know, their neighbors. All of us went through this kind of like period where would we able to you know, get out of our houses? Will we be able to travel? So even the fact that, you know, we were at the airport, for us, we were pinching ourselves that we actually got out of the house. So for us, it is important that animation, visual effects kind of, you know, creates these epic worlds that we can sometimes escape to. And certainly during COVID, a lot of us needed that space to escape to. We pride ourselves in being technically and creatively excellent. And I don't say this with a sense of hubris or arrogance. It's because we are a work in progress. You know, WIP? You all know WIP, right? We are that. And I believe that excellence and technical creativity comes from pounding the pavement every day. And so that's also my message to the students, to say, or even people who own companies, it's not easy being a company owner. You know, you wake up one morning, clients are not happy with what you're doing, or they want the budget to be dropped and the scheduling tighter. So it is always important to push yourself beyond your kind of like a mediocre, and we are always trying to level it up. So important to, you know, push for technical and creative excellence. This is very important for me and for us as a community and as a company to change the narrative and the stereotypes about Africa. A lot of you know if you Google a picture of Africa, often it's the kid with, you know, the fly on the mouth, and or hungry children. And I think you can see my sister and I did not, you know, we're certainly not hungry. And I know there is, you know, poverty, there is all of that. You know, we are living and breathing communities. So all the things that you see, that's not the only representation of Africa. Africa is a vibrant place, and certainly South Africa. And I also have to keep telling myself that this is a kind of like a message that goes across all the time. People thinking Africa is a country. You know, Africa is a huge, diverse continent made out of 1.2 billion people who speak vastly different languages, and we may look alike in some instances, but we also are so diverse that we don't look alike. You know, people from North Africa, South Africa, West and East, totally different people. So it's important that we change those narratives that diminish and that minimize our importance. So Chocolate Tribe is a manifestation of that as well. Diversity of the team and having just people who think differently is very important. So even in our team, we've got, as I said to you guys, that we work with Indian teams as well. You guys have a very rich culture. So whenever we are speaking to each other, you know, the synapses are triggered. You know, there are different ways of seeing things. And that for me is an amazing testament of what animation and creativity can do. You know, it opens up the gates and the doors for different people. So I just wanted to share and I know some of you have already seen it a little bit, but I just wanted to share some of the work that we've been doing. And we recently turned 8 years old. And a lot of people couldn't believe that a company that was started by a lawyer, because they think we are very boring and very serious and all of those things, has, you know, come to this level of work and has had so many, you know, different partners in the industry. So I just wanted to, if you'll indulge me for a couple of minutes. Sorry, am I just pressing it? Because this is not my laptop, so am I just pressing it? Will it start? I'm not actually seeing whether. How do I get it to play? Do I just. It is on next. Sorry, how do I. When it's not your computer. So. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I just wanted to share some of the work that you've seen that's become part and parcel of Chocolate Tribe's story. Robert and Scarecrow, this one and the one at the bottom, was really a story. We collaborated with a UK studio, and it was a story about a robot and a scarecrow fell in love, and the robot is dying. The cell, the battery that is fueling the robot's life is dying. And so it was a very emotional story. The writer and director actually wrote that about his dad because his dad was passing on. And that catapulted us into the international scene. That was around 2015, and it won several awards internationally. And I think it also broke through the narrative that South African or African creatives could not create things beyond, the sort of traditional vibe that we always seen, like with spears and, so it was important for us to break through those stereotypes and create work that was internationally, consumable and internationally recognizable, and stories that we all can, attest to or speak to, that we are connected to. Jurassic Park was actually a personal project that we did in studio. As somebody mentioned in the panel, there are moments of hiatus in a studio where, there's not a lot of work going on. And another important thing for students is that if your teachers have not given you anything, don't sit there and, mulling over. That's the time to create personal projects for yourself, because that is actually, the reason why we hire people is because we see their personal projects, not the ones that, your lecturers would have, given you. So this was a personal project that we did, and it was for a pitch for actually an American company. We didn't win the job, and we didn't cry about it, because 3 years later, actually quite recently, they came back to us and they had like 5 other projects, and they remembered this private or personal work. So it's important to constantly apply yourself and push yourself beyond, what your lecturers give you. And then the next one was Penny. It was a German company, and it was an ad that we had to do. So Chocolate Tribe moves from, photorealism 3D work to stylized 3D work. So that's the versatility that also your lecturers are talking about, that be versatile, don't be stuck to one thing, kind of like move and see where your, maybe not even boundaries, but how you can push those boundaries in your creativity. And then this was actually one of my favorite with Muhammad Ali. The Muhammad Ali family actually got involved with this ad. It was for a Showmax. It's kind of like a South African channel, not only South African actually, it was African channel, and they were celebrating Muhammad Ali's life. And what was so interesting about this was a lot of people didn't know that this was actually 3D. They thought that we had, put, photographs or footage of Muhammad Ali, but in that actual commercial, it's full-on 3D. The world is 3D, Muhammad Ali is 3D, and so in the beginning, the judges, when we submitted the work, they were like, are you guys sure that this is not footage? And so when we showed them the BTS, it was amazing to get that reaction. The alien is from Much Love. We do love chicken. That's the one stereotype I can tell you. We do love chicken, so a lot of the ads that we do have to do with chicken, and this was one of them. There are several others that we've done for a brand called Chicken Licken, so it's an equivalent of KFC, and they do very interesting and cutting-edge ads. One of them recently has to do with the Black Panther, Wakanda, and they did a whole production just for chicken. That is how much we love chicken, so that's a stereotype that I don't mind. I mean, even the watermelon one, I don't mind. I just eat it. It's good, And then Pringles, I don't know, those who are probably situated in America would have recognized it. It was for the Super Bowl in beginning of this year. So we were approached by, again, an American production company called The Grey to produce this ad. They actually flew into Cape Town. What you see is real water, obviously, and they filmed from a pontoon for days, and but the pod is 3D. It's a CG pod, and all the different kind of like, space station that they have. And so I've explained these two. So now, this is the crux of the matter. A lot of you would be asking, what the hell, man? You know, a lawyer into animation, how does this work? And as I indicated to you guys that, for me, I understood law beyond, the kind of gray, funny hair, and the big gowns, and people speaking in somewhat tongues and sections and all of that. I always felt that law was a creative space, and I know lawyers are often, said to be creative truth tellers. That's as creative as we can get, which means we are liars. But for me, it was much deeper than that. And so, as I said, in 2014, I saw an opportunity. I saw how storytelling was so important, not only to young children, but to also to grown-ups. In making sure that we reinstate our identity, we reinstate our culture, we speak to each other on a deeper level than just pictures and words. So if you don't remember anything I've said, this is the most important slide for me. This has been a buzzword for some time, pivoting. I've been hearing everybody like when we have Zoom meetings, oh, you should pivot and you should do this and that and the other. For me, this is very important, and this cuts across all our lives. It was important for me to pivot from law to animation because I saw the opportunities that were happening in animation and in VFX and in the creative space. Just the dry meaning of pivot means to rotate, to revolve, and for me, that's my own spin on it, to reimagine. But let's break it up a little bit. Pivoting for me is those who have done physics, and I'm sure a lot of you have, when you're an animator, often you're seen only as an art student, but animation is both an art and a science, So when you've done physics, to rotate is to turn around, is to look at, the entire holistic purview of where you are. It's a 360 rotation, and what that does for you when you pivot and you rotate is you're able to see a bigger picture than what is in front of you. So pivoting is a very important thing. Pivot for me also means to revolve, and the word revolve also has the word evolve, We're here because we're supposed to be the species that's evolved beyond, the other ones that are still on all fours. And so evolution is very important in terms of your thinking, in terms of your doing. You have to make sure as an animator, as an artist, you're not stagnant. You're not sitting in one place. And as we've seen with COVID, pivoting became the buzzword because a lot of people were so stuck in, what are we going to do now? The world is coming to an end and all of that. And what was important, and those people that broke through that, were people were able to revolve. The interesting kind of image I had in my head as I was looking at the word, with my fascination for words, I told you about that before, was that revolve also speaks to, a gun, and in a gun, I've never held a gun, I just know it from the movies. That's also the power of movies, right? And I see the chamber of a gun revolving, hence the revolver. And what that tells me is about, as a person, as an artist, as a creative, you need to be able to be laser focused, the way a gun would aim at something, very sharp, poignant, and, go for it. So to revolve is very important as an artist and as a creative. Pivoting again for me means reimagine, Think of yourself beyond your personal limitations. The reason why we're also in love with the Marvel, movies is because they take us to a place where we can imagine ourselves as superheroes. We can imagine ourselves as, those who might have an inclination as evil masterminds. You can go to that space, you can go to that place and be fantastic. And so for me, if you don't remember anything I've said, please remember the importance of pivoting, because that's what I did, you know. I saw an opportunity in this space, and I went for it. And a lot of us have this thing of, and I certainly think it also happens in, you know, Indian communities as it happens in African communities, where you're expected to be in a traditional career. So, by the way, when I told my parents that I was going to hang up my gown and my, you know, they were a bit mortified, like, what? You know, being a lawyer, you know, you're rich, you know, you've got this social status and all of that. And for me, it was important to do what was truly impactful for me, you know. And so, besides the fact that I married a Dutch guy, they cringed over the fact that I'd left law to do animation and be in the creative space. So, if you do not remember anything, please remember pivoting is very important. So I wanted to also, you know, talk a little bit about stereotypes, because I think stereotypes are what inhibit us sometimes from being able to pivot. When I went into law, I got a certain level of status, social status, so when I walk into a room, people are willing to listen. But if you say you're a creative, people think you're like, oh God, what good could come of that? And I think even our parents, one of the biggest challenges that we have in South Africa is parents do not want their kids to go into the creative space, you know, because they're worried, are you guys going to get jobs? Are you going to be able to make a living? Will you be able to pay your mortgages and all of that? So I wanted to talk a little bit about stereotypes from both a global perspective, but also, you know, a gender, racial, geographical space. And, you know, I suppose everybody can see the sort of general meaning of what a stereotype is, which is a widely held but fixed and oversimplified image or idea of a particular group, person, or a thing. And certainly there are global stereotypes. Would somebody like to share a global stereotype of, I don't know, Indians or Africans, a good one, you know, because stereotypes can be both good and bad. Anybody volunteer? Yes, please go. Sorry. India, yeah, there you go. Indian accent, there you go. Okay. I'm not sure I can do it, but I don't think I'll do it justice, but there you go. Any other? I heard somebody. Yes, go. True. Is that true or not? It is true. Okay, good. Okay. You were saying something, Archana? Oh, very smart. There you go. There's another stereotype. Like you're either doctors, lawyers, and software engineers. So that's the stereotype. And for us as Africans, that we dance a lot, and it's true. In a minute, I'm about to break into a dance. Yeah, so there are a lot of stereotypes about different people. And those stereotypes can be inhibiting, but they can also be liberating. There was a research done in America about why script writers write characters the way they do, especially the stereotypical archetypes from different groups. And a lot of them said it wasn't anything malicious. It wasn't a bad thing. It's just shorthand, you know. So if I want to situate myself in India, I'll, you know, put a large family. And we've already spoken about it. It's done. I'm seeing it on screen. I understand what's happening. It's, you know, as much as it's a trope, but it is, you know, what we understand of the other person. So, as I said, stereotypes needn't be bad, but they can be inhibiting and limiting, and so we need to be constantly checking. Obviously, there are gender, racial stereotypes, so I'm just going to chug along with that as well. So, the sort of global stereotypes that I was thinking about, my timekeeper is here because as a lawyer, I've been told that I should limit myself from talking because I can be here the whole day, you know, so she's busy raising her hand. But I wanted to go and talk a little bit about, you know, global stereotypes about creatives. Creatives are romantic. Anybody romantic here? Yes, there you go. So you guys are dramatic. There you go, you know. Over the top, illogical, erratic, you know. And for me, the one that is that I'm connected to in a way is the fact that they say artists have opted for the easy route. And because the whole idea is that people don't see art as important, or they don't see art as a science, as I was saying, or an intellectual pursuit. So again, a negative stereotype, which is why when I entered into this space, for me, I became very outspoken about how artists are often marginalized and pushed out of the narrative. I had a conversation with another artist from Johannesburg, and he was saying to me, the reason why a lot of films don't get funded or artists struggle is because artists are often not in the room where the power dynamics are happening. Where the powerful people are, artists are often, they're excluded from those conversations. So I'm saying to you, we need to kick those doors open and we need to be in those conversations so that people don't think we've opted for the easy route. And I think a lot of you may have had this experience from your families as well, where your families may feel like, you are so smart, as an Indian. Why are you going off and doing something that is not going to represent you in the way Indians are represented? That is being a doctor, a surgeon, which is the same thing as a doctor, but I needed to mention the surgeon part because that is, but yeah, so, and often the poor thing also comes into play that, as an artist, you're gonna experience poverty. It's almost even a storyline, you know what I mean? Like the poor struggling artist and, one wears it on the badge. And then that artist drink too much. So I'm going to test it today. I'm going to see, do you guys drink too much? And see if that is, yeah, of course, there you go. But of course, the sort of positive stereotypes that you get, artists are very innovative, interesting, they think out of the box, and they are fun. I'm also going to test that today and see if it is indeed true. The stereotypes about lawyers are that we're cold, we're calculating, we are conservative. Someone told me a joke about lawyers, like, what happens when 500 lawyers drown? No, it's a bit macabre, but we're going to go there. Someone said that's a good day. That's a good start. So, so a little bit harsh. My feelings were wounded, but anyway. And as I mentioned before, lawyers are seen as creative truth tellers, in other words, liars. I don't know if you guys watched, it's a little bit old now, but Jim Carrey's Liar, Liar. And that's sort of, that's kind of like, the stereotype of how, lawyers are constantly lying and never able to say a truth in their life. So again, they say lawyers drink too much. So I think fitting in both categories, can I have lots of drinks today, since I'm both an artist and a lawyer. But of course, again, we're supposedly very smart and have a lot of money. I'm not sure, but let's see. So I just wanted to share an image of this kind of like visual stereotype of lawyers and creatives. So we've got a lawyer in front of the judge here saying, Your Honor, my client requests the opportunity to try a different story, So again, speaking to the fact that story is always important, but, the story of poverty with attorneys is, The other sort of like stereotypes that I want to, unpack a little bit have to do with gender, and these can be quite damaging in the business aspect or the management aspect of any company or organization, but they can also be damaging in terms of the films that we make, the content that we make, because if we don't break away from these stereotypes, we are unable to pivot, to reimagine ourselves as different people who are empowered and can do things. And certainly I'm very encouraged today that there are a number of women here, people of color, we are diverse, we are that chocolate box that I always imagined. So I'm really, really excited about that. But I mean, some of the stereotypes that that we see also on television, that most of the time men are the leads, they are more important, more powerful, and they're great leaders, versus women who are supposed to be subordinates, speak very quietly and be very gentle because you don't want to upset the status quo, and we are appendages and supposedly not great leaders. We're very emotional and, we cry a lot. And those are stereotypes which can be damaging, especially when you want to get out of a career and pivot to another. But I think it's just damaging across the board. And obviously, the one that we all know and has become highly, politicized in different countries is white men are the rightful, the strong, and more competent managers, supervisors, leads in projects, and anyone darker, it's the opposite. Their potential is diminished because they are not white or male or cisgender. And of course, we've got a stereotype of geography. The North and the West is often the most thriving. If you go to most places in the world, in the North and West, those are the areas that seems to have, enjoyed a lot of investment and popularity, and PR campaigns show how great they are. Whereas the South and the East is often the less type. So these are some of the stereotypes, and we see this also in movies. We see it in our daily lives, in our children's lives, and all of that. But I'm seeing a huge change. Watching The Woman King, Black Panther, even Hulk, which, by the way, I don't know what you guys think about it, but yeah, that's as much as I can say. But I think the sort of social commentary is very important in the sense that women can now come out of, the subservient positions, and they can be main leads in films. So, and it is important that when we are animating or when we're writing stories, we don't comply with these kind of rules that we've been told that boys are more technical. And this for me is very important because when it comes to animation, I see a lot of women saying, it's not really my space. I think it's a more technical, space. So it's important to empower girls and women in general to try out and get out there. And our preoccupation is not really about our hair only and makeup. We love makeup. I love makeup, but our preoccupation as women is not just that. It's, other things as well. And like women, we are often running towards the white knight in shining armor. That's who we're looking for. I'm sure some of us are looking for, not me particular, but maybe some of you are looking for that, which is great, fantastic. But that is not the only preoccupation that women have. And we now see in other films as well where women are front-facing in the camera and they're powerful. They're not just in a place in a servile place. So, so what? So what? I'm giving you this long spiel about stereotypes and blah, blah, blah. We've heard it, and it's quite uncomfortable for some people, quite annoying. It's, can be political and all of those things. But in filmmaking, it's become so important. I mean, a lot of you would have heard of the controversy with the Little Mermaid. Went global. People were complaining about that. And for me, why it's important for us to check our stereotypes and our bias of other people, because that is what we end up thinking they are. Before coming to India, we heard a lot of stories, this, that, and the other. But for me, I was like, I'm coming to India because I want to see it for myself. I don't want to be, bound by stereotypes. I don't want to be bound by someone else's experience or narrative. It's important that we break through that. And so, because animation is also accessible to our young children, and it is a genre, I hate calling it a genre, but it is a storytelling format that allows us to tell that story for a child as well as for an adult. It's important how we tell those stories because of that. Childhood memories are connected to the things that they watch and the things that are being said about them. So quite important that those stereotypes are tested and checked and interrogated. And as we all know, stories are very powerful. They're intertwined into our culture. When we got to India yesterday, I'm saying to India like when we got to Mumbai yesterday, and we went into the hotel, one of the, hotel staff members was telling us about the story. So they had pictures, each room is themed you know, and it's a story about a young lady and a young man who fell in love, but he had to, you know, win the father's approval, and because he didn't, they were separated forever. Those are stories we never get to hear, you know. Unfortunately, I've forgotten the names of the two characters, but those are stories we never get to hear. And if those stories are coming out and we're seeing it on we're seeing them on Netflix, on Disney, it begins to you know, invite us into your communities, into your lives, into your families. And so for me, it's important that we start to see those kinds of narratives. And psychologically, so important that all of us have a place to run away and go to, particularly when things are tough. And as I keep saying, we saw that during COVID. Animation is an important part of that. Representation is important and is very powerful, you know, and inspirational. I think for me, the whole idea of having an inclusive vision of our community is quintessential. And as you go through the world, you begin to see how different people think in different ways, but that can only make us stronger. You know, in South Africa, we've got a huge Indian community, by the way, in KwaZulu-Natal. I think it's the third of the fourth biggest population of Indians outside of South Africa. And we've got this saying that we are all mixed masalas, you know what I mean? Which means that you're just a mix of everything. And that's very, you know, important. So I put these examples. Ariel, for example, I'll show you the slide, but even CEOs, the people that are in places of leadership in animation studios, those people will impact the kind of stories that are being told. If we don't have people who are women, you know, POCs in those structures, it's going to be very difficult for us to tell stories that mean something to us and that represent us in the best possible light. I've never been to Japan, but I know anime, you know. So you can imagine how powerful an image is of someone or some place or something. So yeah, we need to just make sure that that is, we've got this African saying that reads, until the lion has its own storytellers, the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. So the winner of any war or any situation is the one that's going to tell the narrative from their perspective. It's important that we, you know, are part of those perspectives and we tell our own stories and we're not left out of narratives. So these are some of the shows that I picked out or you know, people that I thought were going to best also explain why stereotypes and representation is also important. So a lot of you know about Ariel, who typically in the Disney movies has been, you know, a white person. And so with Hailey Bailey, there was a lot of controversy with her being the Little Mermaid, even though this is a fictional story. You know, it's a fictional story. It could be about anybody or anything, but those are kind of like the pushes and pulls that we're going through as a community. And Aisha Daka, she's doing quite well. I think she acted in Star Wars as well. That was also a point of controversy, but I'm glad that, you know, the writers and the producers, you know, forged ahead and put her. He's in Lord of the Rings trio, Lord of the Rings, the series, the episodic Indonesian young boy. There's also been controversy around that, but, you know, and it's important for us to see ourselves in other people. Mindy Kaling is doing brilliantly in America, and what's so amazing for me about her is she's also broken the stereotype in a lot of ways, you know, dark-skinned, very funny. Normally, you know, Indians are kind of pegged as being the smart scientists or the smart, you know, but she's doing something that is, you know, outside that box. And this for me is a particularly important one, you know, controversial as it is, very important, because he hasn't acted in any movie, by the way, just so you know. This is more to do with leadership, you know. The more we have, you know, people of color in roles of leadership, and Rishi Sunak being the British Prime Minister, first ever, is epic, guys. It's huge in the sense that often those positions are not our positions, they're not for us. And so it was important to, have this as part of representation in terms of leadership. And I put it there knowing that as much as he's not an actor or he's not a creative, for me, it speaks to the idea of who is a leader, who can be a leader. Of course, the jury is out to see how he'll perform, but the point is, it is good to see people who are, different. And of course, there is the whole transgender movement. There are people who do not experience our bodies the way we experience them, and so we need to open up those spaces. And I know there's another controversy with respect to that, but part of being inclusive, part of even pivoting, is being able to see a different side of the story, being able to see a holistic story of yourself, of other people. So these are some of the conversations that, and then these are also fairly popular, I can't remember it now, it's just, so there you go. I was thinking of Spirit, I was thinking of, but this was so interesting to see a full-on, black animated film, which did exceptionally well as well, and all the others as well. There's a fascination about black hair, and this short film, kind of speaks through that in a very emotional way. Similarly with Spider-Man as well. So the stories that we want to tell are stories of people of different colors, different shades, different communities. And so I just, kind of like put down a little, of my thoughts about the stories that we want to tell. So we want to tell stories that are of all types of, stories. We do not want to be typecasted. We want to tell stories that express our lived experience, that are nuanced, showing us as complicated beings and not, linear and, packaged in one kind of stereotype. And we want, the dignity of artists, of creatives from, POC backgrounds to have their dignity restored. We want funny, entertaining stories, and stories that glue us together as a community or as a tribe. And so some of my sort of final parting thoughts, just things that I put down and wanted to share with you guys. Moving from law to animation wasn't easy, it was very difficult. I had a number of people who were unhappy with that because, of course, I've got 3 children and they were like, how are you going to feed your kids, going into this space which is uncertain, it's volatile, artists are often, as I said before, kicked out when budgets go down, they're the first ones to go. So it's certainly been not an easy road. I don't want to kid you and say it's, smooth sailing, go into art or creativity without, understanding the challenges that come with. And those challenges continue. It's just the way we are learning to deal with them and learning to break through them. And so, okay, where was I? Starting and running a business requires a multitude of skills. So certainly as a lawyer, that for me has helped in the sense that lawyers are natural problem solvers. Whenever a problem arises, I'm able to kind of put my legal hat on and also my creative hat on and say, okay, this requires a creative solution. So don't get it twisted thinking that, being a lawyer or creative is superior than the other. You need all your skills when you're running a business and you're doing this kind of work. So it was also easy for me to connect dots in a way, but at the same time, the difficulties don't go away because you are running a business or you are, in a creative space. A lawyer and a creative, I often wear different hats and have to learn to allocate my time. And, when you are reading contracts, it's not the same skill when you're reading a script. So you should be able to kind of like take one hat off and put the other hat on as well. So versatility is important. I deal with a lot of NDAs. I don't know Does anyone know what an NDA is, which is very important? Brilliant. Because the biggest thing that happens to artists is the fact that our work is often replicated by someone else or copied by someone else, and then you've got people who are upset because they didn't go through the proper official process of giving the other person an NDA. All the other things are just things that, as a lawyer, a creative lawyer, I have to go through. But what's important, guys, for me is the last line. Animation is a business, and I've often gotten flack when I've said that because people are like, no, animation is a passion, it is a vocation, you cannot turn it into a corporate business. But money talks. And as much as all of us are, very passionate about it, and I always say to people that we truly are in the business of harnessing passion, and that's not an easy thing. So understand your business as very important, even if it's a creative business. There's often also a misconception that just because you're a creative, you're not professional. But a creative and a professional are symbiotic, same thing. Just probably my last slide, but I wanted to just share some statistics because this will be very important in terms of us going forward and pushing through this space and making it an amazing space, and a space where the young people, the up-and-coming artists can understand where they fit in terms of money, jobs, the market. Currently, what the global animation space is doing is it's in an all-time high. The market size vacillates from 18 billion to 372 billion in 2021. So it's a huge space. It's not a Mickey Mouse, little industry. And growth is being projected to be at 5.2% between 2022 and 2030. And of course, if you want access to this presentation, I'm happy to share so you can look at where all this information is coming from. And India particularly, 83 billion rupees in 2021, so approximately about 1 billion in terms of the industry, and 120 billion rupees, 1.5 billion in terms of the market share. For some reason, Africa and Middle East are banded together. Actually, it's not for some reason. I know the reason being that Africa doesn't produce a lot of animation. We're still in our fledgling stage, and so between Middle East and Africa, there's a very small, market share, but it is growing. It's at 22 billion, and so with the population of Africa and India being 1.4, what I would like you guys to imagine today is that out of this 1.4 billion people, we've got 1.4 billion storytellers. 1.4 billion storytellers. So imagine if each and every one of us started to tell stories about our experiences, about our communities, about who we are. That would be an amazing thing. So we need to collaborate with each other. It was spoken on the panel as well that collaboration has become very important amongst the different people. And certainly technology has become a leveler to ensure that we do that. And both places, I don't want to say continents because, as much as Africa is a continent, India is still a country. And so we've got young nation, we're both young spaces, eager to learn, and we have a high uptake for technology and innovation. So just to tie everything up, for me, what's important is that we learn to pivot. We learn to understand ourselves beyond your 9 to 5, the title that you've put on yourself or the studio has put on yourself, and see yourself beyond that. And so my journey from law to animation has really about being able to transition not only my skills, but my ability to understand, both spaces and translate that skill and that information to the next. So thank you so much, guys, and really appreciate to. Thank you. So, any questions? Any questions at all? Any questions? No questions. I've kind of like zipped you guys up. Are we hungry? Are we thirsty? What? Any questions at all? None? Okay. Nothing? There's one. Thank you. Go ahead.
As someone with a lawyer background and with an animation VFX background, what do you think of what is your view of the text-to-image generators and the implications of those?
What is, sorry, I missed the other. The?
Ethical
Oh,
implications
of AI.
yeah.
The ethical implications of AI.
Yeah.
There's something that somebody said on stage about being human. You know, I think if we are centered around understanding ourselves as human and acting in the most empathetic way and focusing on the fact that technology is really meant to enhance our lives and other people's lives, I think that is where our ethics will come from. Understanding that it isn't meant to create a kind of like an evil space or a space that ends up subjecting other people. So for me, AI, and there's this whole great debate about, you know, the rise of the machines and they're going to come and take over us. AI is influenced by humans. And so if we are able to infuse ourselves in our best selves, actually, because we can do horrible things, but if we're able to infuse ourselves in the most positive and in the most, enhancing way, I think it's a force of good. I think AI is meant to create better lives for all of us. I don't really see it being an issue per se, but I do understand that a lot of people are very concerned about, you know, the robots and the machines taking over, and, you know, and the other big concern is the fact that it ends up taking jobs and people will not have jobs and all of that. But if you are a creative person, and I think if you're a person who is focused on the bigger picture, you'll be able to, you know, I don't want to say assimilate. I think you'll be able to do something other than what might be problematic in the space of AI. I've kind of meandered around answering your question. Do you feel like I've answered it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it is a gray area.
I kind of went
anyway.
a little bit. Sorry?
It is a gray area anyway, so yeah.
It is
a difficult,
definitely a gray area, and I think a lot of lawyers also don't know what to do with it. You know, it's a whole mental change. It's trying to, and traditionally, it is true. I mean, like, lawyers are very conservative, so even taking up, you know, technology, it's not an easy thing, because there's performance in being an attorney. There's, you know, the many books and all of that, and how do you remove that character to something that is different? And so it definitely is a gray area. But for me, I think it's a force for good. There's certain things that lawyers do which don't, even accountants, you know, if a machine can do it better and more efficient and can get it right, why not, you know? So my ethos is, it's a point of enhancement. It's, you know, yeah, I don't know. Anybody else has, you know, intel or wants to share their thoughts on that? No? Well, thank you, guys. I think that's it, isn't it? Thank you very much. Any other questions? Anybody?
Hi.
Hi, Ritu.
My question is from a little bit of a personal interest, not purely, say, from an animation point of view. But in your whole, you know, talk about pivoting, I genuinely want to know, now you've worked with so many creatives.
Yes.
what are the stereotypes that have broken in your engagement with, all the animation professionals in your life?
I think the stereotype that's broken from that is that, and this is very important, it's about the fact that, artists or creatives are poor. It's again a definition of what you see as poor. You know what I mean? I've met people who are poor and not smart. Those are the two stereotypes that I've come across and that are damaging. And what I've kind of gotten to know is that artists are so often I'm amazed, at the kind of solutions they come up with. If you want to get a problem solved, I would definitely get creatives involved because they're the ones who are going to look outside the box. Lawyers generally, we're looking in sections in the box, we're formatted. And so working with creatives for me has been amazing because they're able to go beyond the parameters. And there's a little bit of craziness in that, a little bit, but it's a good craziness because we go there. And that's also the human pursuit, isn't it? To go beyond, to break those boundaries. And so, yeah, I would say it's the one that they are poor and that they are not smart. And what we've seen with the animation space is it's growing. There's such a ravenous desire for more content, interesting content, different content. So we are literally exploring new spaces and new worlds because of creatives. The very chair that you're sitting on, a creative created it, and the mobile phones that we use daily, a creative thought about that. And I often don't think creatives get the the kind of accolade or push that they ought to get. So for me, those would be the two that I think have broken from my experience as an attorney. And there's often a looking down on creatives based on both of those. Which for me, I'm working extremely hard, especially with parents, with young people, to say, you will definitely get a job if you're good at what you're doing. You will. There's an abundance of work in this space. You just need to do, what's necessary and apply yourself fully all the time. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Anything else? Oh, another question.
So I wanted to ask you, since you're from a legal background and you've been
Yes.
working in the creative industry,
Right.
for smaller studios or even larger studios for that matter, and especially independent creators, how would you, what kind of tips could you possibly give from a legal perspective? How do you protect your copyright, right? Because we're in the age,
Yes.
or in the digital age of oversharing. Yes. So how does one actually sort of protect their work?
Okay. So I think the premise of IP, intellectual property, lies on the fact of being original, right? And I get a lot of people who will come to me looking for legal advice and say, oh, I went to this, broadcaster, I had this amazing idea, and they told me that it wasn't a great idea, or they told me they didn't have time to produce it, and then 3-4 months later, you see it on TV. In terms of the law, if you want your idea to be protected, you need to have it memorialized. It needs to be written down. So if you're going to approach a broadcaster or a producer, make sure that your work is documented. You can do it via film, you can do it via writing. Global IP law states that once you've done that, you've affirmed your copyright. So you don't need to necessarily, and I know in America you need to go to an organization or a body to register your copyright, which would be the great thing to do. I don't know what the laws are like in India, but if you can register your copyright, if you've written a script and you want to make sure no one steals that script, or a photograph or something, there are institutions that you can go to and register that copyright. But global copyright law stipulates that once you have written your name and memorialized that, it is yours, So anybody else who copies that photograph or who uses it has to give credit to you or has to, pay you for it. And in a day and age of oversharing, you have to, figure out, Signu, if you want to get the, okay, there are two ways of approaching it. Sometimes people will fight for that copyright if it's in the public space, but sometimes people accept it because I get marketing value from you spreading my copyright. So you can approach it from a legal perspective, which is, I don't want people sharing my pictures or sharing my photographs that I've, I don't know, I went to Paris, I took this picture of the Eiffel Tower at a certain hour, and it's, become viral, and so it is mine. Or you can just simply accept the fact that you're being given marketing value as an artist for that. So it's a give and take. Being a lawyer is also thinking from a business sense, so I would put my business hat in that situation and say, do you want the marketing value of that picture going viral and people getting to know you as an artist, or do you want to reinstate your IP as the owner of it? So you have to kind of figure out what it is that you want. But certainly in terms of global IP law, once you have memorialized your piece of work, whatever it is, your copyright has been affirmed as the owner of that piece of work. So even photographs, when you take a picture, that is copyrightable. But you have to decide if sharing it and then someone else shares it, you're going to fight about that, or you're just going to accept that everyone loved your photograph, and that's, yeah. So, yeah, you're welcome. Anything else, guys? Are we sorted? Are we good? All right. I think I'm done, and I'd really love to thank you guys for this opportunity to be here.
Thank you so much, Nosipho, for being here. We really loved having you over.
Thank
As a
you.
token of appreciation.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. This is. Thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate that.